All right, so we're always talking about Bitcoin's price, right? The crazy highs, the gut-wrenching lows. But what if the real danger isn't just another dip in the market? Today, we're going to look at the deep stuff, the vulnerabilities that could actually threaten Bitcoin's existence. Let's really get into it.
So that's the big question, isn't it? What could actually destroy Bitcoin? And look, the answer is way more complicated than just another market correction. We're talking about that 1 in a million event, that black swan that could bring the whole thing crashing down for good.
You know, the worst-case scenario isn't just one thing going wrong. It's more like this dangerous cocktail of tech failures, government pressure, economic chaos, and just a complete and total collapse of belief. It's about the fundamental trust in the whole network just evaporating.
To really wrap our heads around these risks, it's helpful to think of Bitcoin like a giant, intricate house of cards. Its value is built on all these different layers: the technology, the trust people have in it, and its general acceptance. Every single one of those cards is crucial, and if you pull just one, the whole thing gets pretty wobbly.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at these different scenarios one by one. We'll check out the pressures from the outside world and the cracks that could form from inside the code itself. Anything that could start yanking those cards out and threaten to bring the whole tower down.
Let's start with the threats from the outside. These are the big forces out in the real world that could put unbelievable pressure on the Bitcoin network, and it wouldn't matter how solid the technology is. Okay, first up, and this one is a biggie. A coordinated global regulatory crackdown. I want you to just picture it. The world's biggest players, the US, the EU, China, all acting together at the same time to just outright ban Bitcoin. Not just trading, but mining, even owning it. This wouldn't be a speed bump. It would be a direct assault.
And from there, it's a domino effect. With a global ban, liquidity would just vanish overnight. All the exchanges, the main way people get into crypto, they'd be forced to shut down. Bitcoin would get shoved into the shadows, into underground markets, and that would totally change how people see it. For the average person, it'd become way too sketchy to trust or use.
But the pushback doesn't only come from government regulators. It's also coming from a growing concern about Bitcoin's environmental footprint. I mean, its massive energy use is a huge point of debate, and that's putting it mildly.
So this pressure could show up in a few ways. Governments might just ban mining because of emissions, or they could slap huge carbon taxes on it that make mining completely unprofitable, or they could just cut off access to the cheap power miners rely on. The bottom line here is any of these actions would be a direct hit on the security and the whole economic model of the network.
Okay, so we've covered the shocks from the outside. But some of the most terrifying threats could actually come from inside Bitcoin's own code and network.
There are really three big scenarios here. First, the infamous 51% attack, where one group gets enough mining power to basically rewrite history and double-spend coins. Second, what if a massive critical bug is found deep in the code, one that could let someone create coins from nothing or just steal everyone's funds? And third, the one people have been talking about for years, quantum computing getting powerful enough to just break the encryption that keeps every wallet safe. Any single one of these would completely shatter trust in the network's security.
Now that leads to a different kind of internal threat. This one isn't a big, dramatic explosion. It's more like a slow fade into irrelevance. I mean, what if something just better comes along?
And this really highlights a key challenge. Let's be honest, Bitcoin has its limits. It's kind of slow, it can't handle tons of transactions, and it uses a wild amount of energy. So if a new crypto pops up that solves all those problems, one that's faster, can scale up, and is way more efficient, well, it could just make Bitcoin obsolete. Like how smartphones made flip phones disappear.
And all this leads us to the third and maybe the most fragile foundation of all, belief. Because really, without people believing in its value and its future, Bitcoin is just a bunch of code.
A huge reason Bitcoin has gained so much legitimacy lately is because big institutions jumped on board. But what happens if they all jump off? Imagine huge investment funds starting a massive sell-off. Picture major companies dumping Bitcoin from their balance sheets. If the same financial world that embraced it suddenly decides it's too risky, that could kick off a catastrophic panic spiral. And this, right here, gets to the absolute heart of it. A stock is tied to a company's profits. A dollar is backed by a government. But Bitcoin's value? It's almost entirely driven by what we all collectively believe it's worth. It's all about perception. So if that story, that narrative, just shatters, if most people suddenly decide Bitcoin has failed as digital gold or that it has no real use,
then the demand that's holding up its price could just vanish. Poof, gone.
So now, let's put it all together. What does it actually look like when that house of cards comes tumbling down? This is the ultimate nightmare scenario where all those different pressures we talked about hit at once and just feed off each other.
A number like this isn't just a bad day on the charts. A 90% crash from its all-time high would mean a fundamental and probably irreversible collapse in both value and trust.
And here's how it would probably go down. It would start with huge cascading sell-offs that just overwhelm the exchanges, causing a bunch of them to fail. That would ignite global panic, wiping out investor fortunes. The price would fall so low that mining wouldn't be profitable anymore, so miners would shut down, making the network less secure. And all of this would be fueled by a non-stop tsunami of negative media, cementing the idea that Bitcoin had finally, officially failed.
Okay, after painting that pretty grim picture, it is absolutely essential that we look at the other side of the coin. We have to talk about Bitcoin's incredible history of resilience.
Because here's the thing, Bitcoin is tough. It has already survived multiple crashes of over 80%, outright bans from major world powers, endless criticism, and all kinds of technical scares. This ability to get stronger from shocks, some people call it anti-fragile, is one of its most powerful features.
And that leaves us with this final question. These worst-case scenarios we've walked through, they are absolutely real possibilities. But Bitcoin's track record is one of beating the odds, time and time again. So the real question is that history of resilience enough to save it from the perfect storm? The final card? Well, it hasn't been played yet.